hop in. Good afternoon. This is Ifan from the Strategic Day Trader, and this is your market wrap for September 25th, 2019. Qs recovering from yesterday's sell-off, up 1.2% on the Qs, got about 25 minutes left, and then up 0.6 here on the SPY. All right, so we are looking to set up a bit of a pullback here on the weekly. SPY still remaining bullish on the weekly, Qs as well. But I think what we witnessed over the last, through the beginning of this week is kind of a shift to neutral, right? That's what we talked about coming into the beginning of the week, right? That we weren't getting a lot of follow through to the upside. Hourly uptrend had been, wasn't able to hold, okay? But the problem is that as far as looking short, we just didn't really have the time frame alignment for that. Okay, so especially, coming into today is not the kind of thing that you want to be kind of just chasing a red bar, or maybe you have a certain interpretation of the news, which while we will discuss kind of news today, as far as like political events and things like that, it's really not part of my game planning for the market here. Now, I know that the market can make quick moves yesterday, right? A lot of news impact in today as well, but I let price tell me, right, what it's going to do, what is setting up, or sometimes, as has been the case kind of for the this week here, is that it's been kind of pretty neutral. Neutral not in a kind of boring or sideways or muted way, but in kind of a sloppy way, that it's been pretty neutral. Attempts to go higher, getting sold, attempts to go lower, also getting bought. So a lot of back and forth. We're kind of looking at this really ugly consolidation that we had for almost 2 months there, right? I asked the room, what pattern is this? What does this look like? And everyone correctly kind of identified, well, this is just sloppy, choppy stuff. And I think, unfortunately, we're getting a little bit more of that again. So there were about 2 weeks there where we were bullish, right? And the SPY was able to kind of get back up to make a new high. And we're still doing this pullback. Larger time frames still look bullish. We just got a little bit sloppier here. Okay, so what am I going to be looking for into tomorrow and then next week as well is that establishing this hourly uptrend again to give us time frame alignment. Okay, we don't really have what we need to start a bearish bias, okay, barring any kind of big news event that really brings us deep into that sloppy range that we were talking about. Barring that, we're just really looking for the hourly to pick back up into an uptrend. That'll give us time frame alignment to be back to all out bullish. Okay, so right now going to be neutral, looking for the hourly here, which it looks like it's trying to do, right? Establish that we can put in a higher high, and then if it puts in a higher low, and then from there you can actually consider that a buy setup, right, and switch back to a bullish bias. So I think we're one setup away from back to a bullish bias, and a couple setups away still really from any kind of bearish bias. Okay, so neutral to bullish going into tomorrow. All right, so what I wanted to talk about today is the LCI. The LCI actually couldn't get this to work. The first play didn't work, and then the second play only got to an initial target. But I wanted to bring this to your attention because it's one that you've seen me call quite often in the last couple of weeks, and it's a news event that can be easily kind of confused for a similar one, okay? And what I'm talking about here is the issuance of convertible senior notes, okay? So the news will look something more or less along the lines of this, right? Convertible notes. There was one yesterday as well, in case you weren't in the room. We discussed it as well yesterday. All right, so I'll give it to you here. Okay, plans to raise in convertible senior notes sale there. And so that can easily be confused for your standard secondary offering, which is an issuance of new shares. And the difference here is that the issuance of new shares a lot of times will look like this. Price's public sale of 11 million common shares, okay? And so that is going to be an issuance of new shares, right? When something goes IPO, that's the initial public offering, and then any offering after that of new shares, right, is a secondary offering, okay? And that event actually, while it does maybe seem like it should be a bearish event, typically they don't go anywhere or they get bought actually, right? They typically don't go anywhere, and then sometimes they also get bought. So in the case of the STAG today, this was a secondary offering. Sometimes they do get sold as well. But the issuance of convertible senior notes is more in line with an issuance of debt. So that is going to be typically interpreted as a more bearish event. Okay. Now I'm going over this LCI because it was in that group of under that news event they were offering this note, even though right it didn't really go anywhere. Right. So what does that mean for tomorrow? I think it's something we should watch for tomorrow to see if it gets followed through to the downside. Okay, pretty neutral bar here. Actually, kind of acting like a standard secondary. But I think that means we have good grounds to watch it for tomorrow, okay? Because the last couple that we've gone after have been pretty good. If you went after the PDD yesterday, right, and a lot of things did get sold yesterday, there was a nice breakdown in here, okay? That was an issuance of debt. That was an offering of senior notes here. The IOTS from last week as well here, right in here. We had a really nice breakdown here, kind of right at lunch, I think is when this started to get going. Although you could have played it here, you could have played it here, right? Yeah, right as we were kind of middle of lunch, nice breakdown there. Hopefully you played that with me. So that event, right, I really, really like. When I see that, you know, it's something I go after. You know, because as much as we want to be focused on technical analysis, 100%. Honestly, you know, I can't say that I am. So here's the kind of issuance here again of senior notes there on the IOTS that we played last week. Okay, so that event I do really like, and you know, if it's a good gap and it gives us a setup, right, then I definitely want to give it a shot. And so, you know, when it comes to something doing a secondary, I mean, that is, you know, technically a gap down, but I know that it's a dilution, you know, of equity for shareholders, and this is a direct impact on the volume of this. Let's say something is X dividend, and then the X dividend gets taken out of price. I also know that's not your standard gap. That's probably not going to follow through like it would if it were a standard gap. So those kind of events I do take into account, and I, you know, I'm gonna prioritize things that are reporting earnings and things like this, which the IOTS, the PDD, and the LCI were issuances of debt. I'm gonna prioritize those as well. So there is a bit of a hierarchy. I'm not gonna get into, you know, oh, did they price it well? What does that really do to this company's balance sheet? Where does that put them as far as vulnerability for defaulting? Anything like that, right? I just am going to look for a pattern, right, and favor this one, right? Give it a little bit more attention if it gives us a setup, okay? So that's going to be the case for something like the PDD yesterday or the IOTS when I see that, okay? So I think it's important to make that distinction because, you know, and on the opposite end, I'm pretty much going to ignore this STAG. Like I did see this setup here on the STAG, right? Looked like it wanted to break lower. But knowing that this isn't a real gap, that this is a secondary, right? Then I'm going to be less likely to play it. Almost never going to play these secondary offerings. They just don't usually move that much. And if they do, they're going to move higher, right? And so you could, I guess, look to play these long, but I think more often than not, they don't go anywhere. So if they don't go anywhere, it's not something I really, really want to force my way into as a long. Okay, so hopefully, you know, that makes sense. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention because sometimes we look at the news and it can seem very similar to a standard secondary, right? That something that is offering senior notes is priced, and the sale of those, because they can be converted into shares, okay? But at the same time, they are a liability for the company, okay? So they are going to be treated more like an issuance of debt. So it's something that It's typically a pretty bearish event. Whenever I see that, I definitely favor shorting it. I don't think I've ever seen an issuance of notes that resulted in a gap up. I have seen secondaries that have gapped up. It's very, very rare. I have yet to see an issuance of notes that resulted in a gap up, but they're almost always, even the secondaries are going to be gap downs, but especially those issuances of senior notes are usually a pretty good watch for a short opportunity. Okay, and so since the LCI didn't really follow through today, right? I think it'll be good to watch for tomorrow. So we'll see if it gives us some kind of setup. I'll go over the setups here real quick on the LCI here. So we had an attempt at basically a 1, 2, 3 here, right? And then that would have failed because of this green bar. Now, if you know what to look for when it comes to shakeouts, then you would have seen that or quickly determined that there was no follow through to this bar. Put in an inside bar. These are the things we want to get back in, okay? Because you might have just got shaken out of it and it still wants to go lower. So those were the two plays there that I think, the first one, depending on how tight you were and where you got filled, you could have maybe got some out. But the second one did get to target. And then we were kind of looking at it here at the end of the day, but just running out of time, and it doesn't seem like it's moving much, which is why I'm thinking, you know what, this will be on my radar for tomorrow. Okay, especially as we've seen, IOTS, PDD, really nice plays based on a similar news event. Okay, and so, just want to reiterate though that price comes first. I always need there to be a strategy, and these are still, I'm going to consider this a pro gap down, and I still need to get some kind of setup. I'm not just going to blindly short it. So going into tomorrow, I'm not just going to try to short LCI at the open without any kind of setup first, right? But knowing that it is that kind of event, right, I'm going to give it a little bit more priority. Same with the STAG, me giving this less priority because I know that this is a standard secondary offering. Okay, so, hopefully if you weren't already making that distinction between these two types of events, you will be able to moving forward because these will usually result in some nice plays. Okay, I thought the LCI was a little bit disappointing today, but the IOTS and especially that PDD yesterday, really, really nice plays. Okay, so I do like that news event for opportunities for a short. Okay, I hope you did well today. Hope you're having a nice week. I just wanted to mention that if you weren't able to attend yesterday's webinar, that there is a link of the recording in the description. Okay, so we talked about just your most common bad habits among traders, just really simple stuff, not stuff like not waking up on time or getting distracted, but real things that are sometimes can be hard habits to break, like getting out early or hesitating to enter or getting out late, not taking your stop, things like that, right? And I'm not saying that anytime that you don't get the best absolute price that you got out late or got out early, it's that you broke your plan, even though you knew what your plan was, you knew what your target was, and you just couldn't stick with it, right? It's those kind of things, right? And we usually, as traders, we know what we're dealing with and what our kind of bigger issues are, okay? So, if you missed yesterday's webinar, the recording is in the link in the description for you to check out that way. You can see if there's anything there that might be able to help you moving forward. Okay. All right. That'll do it for today's market wrap. All right. And I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Have a good rest of the day.